Good morning. My name's Paul Betty. I'm the Special Hazards Training Coordinator.
Good morning. My name is Josh Shanley. I'm the media specialist.
Good morning. I'm Christina Mitchell. I'm the
Today
Media
we're going
Specialist
to take you
Coordinator.
through training that is on the virtual classroom, but on this time, instead of teaching you about how to be a presenter, we're going to teach you on how to be a host of the virtual classroom. A prerequisite to get into this class is that you have completed the presenter training and that you've actually spent some time in the virtual classroom. That way you actually understand everything that we're going to teach you today. The first module that we're going to teach you about is the layouts. Now, the layouts are important because this is how you change the layouts for the presenters so that they can go from one layout to another. Here at DFS, we've decided to create three different types of layouts. We have what we call the lobby view, which is where students gather. We show the webcams. It shows the DFS logo. Then we have the other layout, which is the presentation mode, which was where we spend the majority of our time, which is where we actually present our training media. And then the last layout is called collaboration, and that is one that we created to show many different things. A notes page, you have a share page, you have chat, you could have files uploaded or web links. You have a lot of different things, but it's for collaboration. We don't use it as much, but we do offer it out to all of you to use. Now, for the layouts, you have two different places that you can get to the layouts. Starting from the top left, you can go to the Layouts tab, and you'll notice that you have the ability to toggle between lobby to presentation, and then lastly to collaboration. You also have that same feature on the far right-hand side of the screen. You have the ability, again, to toggle between lobby, presentation, and collaboration. And they work exactly the same. So you can use either one of them that you see basically being comfortable to use.
Okay, and now the next feature we're going to show you is called Pods. Pods, if you will see on the top of your toolbar, it's the third menu from the left. You'll spend a lot of time here in the Pods because this is where you're going to be pulling your poll questions, and it has a few other features that you're going to need throughout your class. So let's start off at the first one. You'll see Share. Share is basically what you will see using your video or your sharing of your documents. If in case one of them disappears, this is the place you will go to bring up a new one. So if you go to Pods and then you go to Share, you can either add a new one or find your previous one, and it will pull up in the screen. That's a good feature to remember to have just in case there's a big oops. Your second one is Notes. So if you need to have a note to the students or the instructor, it's a good place to pull that up. People can read it, copy it, and you can use that as almost like a post-it note. Your Attendees is the next menu that's on there. And as you can see on your right-hand side, you are going to see the box that says Attendees. That is everybody that is signed into the classroom. And if it kind of disappears, you can use that to bring it back up. Video, as you can see, will be the video that you see in front of us, which is all of our cameras that either disappear or come back on. And basically you can click that and we will start back up again. Next will be your chat. That is your chat box in the bottom right. That is used throughout all of your classes. And you can, like I said, in case if it disappears, in case if it moves, you can always bring up that one, and you can also bring up a new one, but we tend to leave just that one in the corner. Your next is Files. We really don't use that, but that's a good place to share files in case somebody wants a web link or somebody needs a specific PDF. You can pull that up, and that will be great to share without having to retype it constantly in the chat box. Web links, same thing. You have a web link, you put it in this box, and then basically that will allow the students or the instructors, anybody can click on it and bring you up to a new page. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the poll questions. This is a little tricky because as presenters, you guys don't have the ability to see what we see when the time comes and we have to pull up a question. You know, there are times that we're prepared and it comes up very quickly. Other times we're in the middle of something and it may take us a few extra seconds. This will give you an idea of what it takes to make sure we get that review question up prior to that slide that is being shown. So what you will do is, as you can see, the timeline, and I know you guys know what that is and you've dealt with it, you've seen it. The next slide is going to be our review question, which is technically the poll question. So what we've been doing is we will see the slide before, we will go up to pods, and then we'll go to the poll, and we know that this is the first question for this chapter, so we are going to go and find it, and we've labeled every question to have the training day, and then it's dash 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on which question you're on, to make sure that you're in the right presentation, because Recruit has multiple days, multiple subjects on the same day. You need to find where it's going to be training day. This one here is fire behavior, so it's training day 2-1 because we're on the first question, and it's fire behavior. So we're waiting for the presenter to finish talking, and now he's done, and he's going to switch it over to the next question. And as you can see on the slide, it says review 1. So this is where I am going to click, and the poll question comes up. So what we have to do is to enable the poll question and the students are able to answer is we have to hit reopen. This will allow the students to come in and answer the questions. Now, just remember that depending on how many participants you have in the room, the number, as you can see here, needs to equal what you have in the room. Now, there may be times that students will drop because of their connection. So if technically you have 48 students, but there's only 46 listed, obviously you're going to get 46 responses. And most of the time we wait for those other 2 students to come back in, depending on how quickly their connection comes back. But most of the time they come back quickly so they're able to answer the questions. A little trick of the trade is to know who has answered and who's not. If you look to the left of the poll question, it says view votes. Click on that. As you can see, it gives you a list of students and it tells you who answered and who hasn't. This is a good way to call out the student to make sure that 1, they're paying attention and that they have to answer the question. 2, they may be having difficulties, and that way they know you're checking up to make sure that they are going to answer the question. But this is a good way to see who has answered, who is not, and then you, like I said, you can call them out. To go back to the poll, you'd hit that button again. Now, as you can see here, we have 2 responses, and they're different, and I know you guys can see this part here, but they are different numbers. You can tell who answered what, and once the number equals to the amount of students that are in the list, you would hit end poll. That means they can't answer anymore. And this is where the presenter will go and explain what the answers are, explain about the question. Once they're all done and they've done their explanation, you click on the menu, and then you would go to hide. And now that drops the questions. And then you move on, and as you watch the timeline, you do that whole preparation again. Question and answers, that's one that we rarely use, but it's a good way to interact and engage the students. If there's a question that you want them to answer in a certain way, basically you can show questions, you can make a question, you can show answers. It's a good way to interact to make sure that the students are still paying attention. Next will be the breakout pods. We'll get more into this later when we're talking about the attendees tab and the chat tab, but this is great for instructors that want to meet prior to a class without the students hearing what's going on. It's almost like bringing or going into an office and shutting the door. Nobody can hear you except for those people that are in there, and we'll show you how to set those up. It's pretty simple, and it's a great feature. The next one is move and resize pods. You really don't want to touch that. Basically, the way you see your screen is the way that it should stay. If things move by chance, you are able to resize them. You are able to put them back, but please, please do not try and move them around because this is the setup that we like. And manage pod is just basically what you will see behind the scenes. It tells you what is open, what has been created, what is there. So it's really not anything that, is is it as important as the rest of the stuff on the pods, but it is there in case you need it.
So the next tab is the audio tab, and when you open that, you'll notice that the first line is microphone rights for participants, and for most classrooms that you're going to go into, you'll see that that is set up by default. There are reasons that we keep that open because we want to encourage dialogue between the instructors and the recruits or the students. That said, however, sometimes there are issues that come up in the real world with dogs barking and background noise, feedback, audio feedback. Technical settings can be a challenge, probably one of the biggest challenges that you'll have in the VC. So if you are running into issues, one of the first things you should do is, again, we address this in the initial training, get anyone having problems with their audio to go through the audio wizard under the meeting tab. But you also don't want to slow down the class, so you might want to uncheck that box for meeting microphone rights for participants. This will shut off the microphone for the participants, not the presenters and not the hosts. All right, so you'll see that there will be times where you'll want to do this. The next button down is the enable single speaker mode. We haven't used this all that often because, again, we want to encourage dialogue between everyone. However, if you're running into issues, I could see it being a problem with some of the larger classes. We have some sessions where we're running 60 people in a room and people are just not paying attention to muting their mics and that sort of thing. You might want to activate this. So that is the audio tab. Moving across your screen, again, we touched upon these items in the initial training, but you'll have your speaker, mic, and then your microphone drop down, and the next is your webcam. So as a host, you will have the ability to activate webcams, and the first thing that you'll want to do is make sure that webcams are enabled for participants. And again, similar to audio, you'll see that this is set up by default. If for some reason it is not, or you need to turn it on or off, this is where you would do that. Under your webcam icon, the drop down for check the enable webcam for participants. You'll also see this in the recruit class where we're running 30, 40, 50 recruits. When they all have their videos on, when their webcams on, it does tend to lag the system quite a bit, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But if you're noticing a lag when video is playing, what one troubleshooting item might be to disable webcam for participants. Again, this is not for presenters or hosts, this is strictly for the participants. Further with video, the other thing you'll want to be able to do as a host that the presenters are not able to do, so we'll have to do this for them, is to switch the video modes. So switching to grid is one option. That's the one we are using currently. This is switching to film strip, and you'll see that we are able to move around from one to another. As soon as that happens. Go to a full screen mode. And back. So again, depending on what's going on in the classroom, the instructors may request one layout or the video camera view over another. Typically we'll be in grid. The other option that you might find yourself needing to use here is to stop a particular camera. So I can stop my own camera from presenting, and as a host we don't typically keep our cameras open, but also you also have the ability to X out over anyone in the classroom and turn their camera off. We found that we've been using this for if cameras freeze, which they do from time to time, you'll get an audio feed and the camera will freeze. Sometimes it's distracting. As a host, you can go in there and X out that presenter or the participant's camera. Their audio will continue, but their camera feed will shut off. They have the ability to turn it back on their side unless you change the settings. But these are tools that we use frequently as hosts in the classroom.
All right, so now we're on to the next section called Help. As you can see, you have a few options, or actually like 10 options that you could use. The one that I think you would use the most would be the Adobe Connect Help. That will bring you to the website that is just specific to Adobe Connect. It's a great way that you can search for whatever issue you are having, and it comes up with, usually your selections, and hopefully you can find what your crisis is and be able to fix it on the fly. This way, this will eliminate you having to, get in panic mode and try to find us or give us a call to help you guys troubleshoot. We've been using this since day one, and it's been very helpful for certain tricks of the trades. There is a keyboard shortcut, which is also another way that you can, learn as you go. It's going to be kind of tough at first, and you're going to probably panic a little bit, but let me tell you, as more and more classes you do, it's going to become easier, and then you're going to pick up those troubleshootings very quickly. So I'm not going to go too much into this because it's there, and it is a suggestion of going and clicking on each little link there and see what they all do. But like I said, the Adobe Connect Help is probably the one you're going to use the most to try to help you through class.
Great. The only other thing I'd emphasize is that when you're in the help mode, when you click on one of these links, it's going to bring you outside of the VC and onto the web, into the Adobe web page. So you should definitely take time to get familiar with those, and I would recommend you spend some time getting familiar with the keyboard shortcuts in particular. The other item we want to call your attention to is the connection status button, or the connection status meter. You'll see on this screen it's right next to the help, and on my screen we have 5 bars in green. That means that we are getting, I am getting strong signal, and we are streaming as quickly as I can from my site. This is a little tricky. What we're finding is that it's inconsistent. So what I'm getting on my side might be different from what the other hosts are getting, or what the other participants are getting, or the presenters. So you can only do so much. There are choke points along the line where the feed will get lagged down. This is supposedly coming from Adobe. So if you notice lagging, particularly with the video, you may see the bars drop down, and you may see it go into orange mode. That should be an indicator to you that you are streaming slowly. You may lose webcams, you may see the video or the audio lagging, and we'll talk about how to make adjustments to that in just a few minutes. But this is the connection status meter, and it's up next to the help button.
Okay, next we're going to talk about the Attendees Pod. We've already emphasized a lot on the Attendees Pod in the presenter training, but today what I'm going to focus on is the additional items that you now have available to you as a host when you go into the attendee menu. The first one I want to emphasize is that you have the ability to obviously change different things about the students, but also on your own setup as well. So the first one I want to emphasize is removing a selected user. So if you have a rogue student that made it into the class that should not be there, maybe it's a hacker, maybe it's someone that didn't register, you have the ability to click on that user in the room, and then you have the ability to go to the attendee menu and click remove selected user. And once you do that, that person actually disappears out of the room. They get a message on their screen that says they've been asked to leave. So that is an option for you. You also have the ability to mute or unmute all users, meaning the participants. Doesn't impact the presenters, but it does mute or unmute. but you also have the ability to remove everyone's audio rights. So when you get that dog barking, you got echo or feedback, kids screaming, whatever, you can't figure it out. The best way as the host might be just remove everyone's microphone privileges and let the presenters continue on doing their training. The next item that I want to talk to is a very important one as well, which is showing individual engagement. And that is on the attendee menu pod, and that is usually checked. And you couldn't see that before as a presenter, but now if you notice in the attendee pod on the far right-hand corner, there's a colored bar. That shows everyone's level of engagement. So you'll see some might be green, some could be yellow, and some could be red. What that is a software algorithm that tests that people are engaged in the software, that they haven't minimized the screen, that they haven't shut down the screen and used another application on their device. And if they were to do that, over a certain period of time, it changes color. Obviously, green is good. Yellow means they've been disengaged for a little bit of time, and red means that they've been disengaged for a longer period of time. And why we're calling attention to that is one of your responsibilities as the host is to monitor that engagement because nobody else can see it. And we want you zinging the students that are turning red. That means they may not be quite participating or engaging as much as we want them to. It may mean they're trying to half listen and then do something else on their device. So when you see someone go red, what we're asking you to do as the host is then start a private chat with that person and say, hey, is something going on? Are you in the software? Are your electronics working correctly? We see that you have gone red and that maybe you're not engaged as much as you used to. And if you need to escalate that up, sometimes you'll see that people don't respond to you. You might actually, during a break, actually have to call them out on microphone and actually call them out and say, we see that you appear not to be engaged. Is there something going on? Now, and a lot of times that is that everything's, they are engaged, but they have electronics problems. There's something going on with the device. Sometimes their Wi-Fi, sometimes they have to get out of the connection and rejoin. And we've seen that happen. But the majority of the times, I'm going to tell you, they've minimized the screen and they're doing something else on their device, and that's what's causing them. One of the last attendee options that I want to talk to you about is when you see the attendees and you see the list on the screen. In today's training, we've shown that there's two different students there. There's Cindy's student and Joe's student. And the reason why is I wanted to highlight that when you hover over these people's name or these participant names, you'll see there's two different setups, and we did this intentionally. So the first one, if you were to hover over Cindy's student, you'll see that there's a button there for the host that says unmute attendee. That means Cindy has turned on her microphone, but actually muted it so she doesn't interrupt the class. But if you hover on Joe's student, you'll see that it doesn't give you an option as a host to mute or unmute. What that tells you as the host is that that person doesn't have their microphone turned on. It doesn't mean you need to chastise them and tell them to mute. It means their microphone isn't turned on, which is perfect because you're not going to hear any background noise. Okay, right now I'm going to focus a little bit more on the attendee pod, and I'm going to emphasize the different views and what it tells you when you're a host and you look at different users. So first, if you start up at the top on the host tab, under the host, you'll see that Josh, Christina, and myself, we're all logged in. Our font is written in black, and the user icons are all yellow. What that tells you as a host is that we're in as a registered user, meaning you have an account, you've logged in with your email, and you've logged in with your password. That means you have a privileged account, and then you can do a lot more in the software. But down below, you'll see under the participants, we now have 3 students. We have Cindy's student who has a blue icon, which means she is in as a guest. meaning all she had to do was put her name. It's an unprivileged account. Below her is Joe Student, who has also got a blue font or blue icon, but you'll see his name is also in black font, which means those two are in as a guest, but they're in using the Adobe Connect application, which is our requirement. Because if you don't use the application and you come in on HTML, sometimes it causes echo and feedback and other software issues within the classroom. And that's what I want to allude to is below, you'll see the third student called Mike Student. Now you'll see the blue icon, which means he's a guest, but you'll also see his name is in blue, which means he chose to join the class using the HTML web browser. And that causes issues in the classroom, but it also causes issues for the individual where sometimes they can't partake using a camera or their microphone and they can't follow along with some of the training material. So we as a host, our job is to police that and not allow that situation to happen in any of our virtual classrooms. We basically tell them to exit and to join using the application, which is a requirement for all of them to attend our training. Okay, one of the last items that I want to talk about is the fourth student that we have here now, and I want to emphasize the difference with that individual. So that is Mike student number 2. You'll notice he has black font, so it means he's in on the application. It's got a blue icon, which means he's in as a guest. But next to that blue icon, you'll see what looks like a little device, a little cell phone. And what that is telling you as the host is that person is joining using a smart device. It could be a tablet, or it could be a smartphone, and that is how that person is taking training. When you don't see that device next to anyone else's name, they're in using a standard laptop or a desktop, and they're partaking in the training.
All right, thank you, Paul. And I'm going to continue on with the attendees. As you can see above the word host, you're going to have 3 different views that you can have on your screen. The first one is the attendees view, which shows the host, the presenters, and all the participants. You know, that is probably your standard view that everybody uses, which, like I said, gives you everything that you need right there. And it's a great feature so you can keep track of the engagement and everybody else on the screen of what's going on. Your second button is called the Breakout view. You are the only one that will have the option of putting people into breakout rooms. And like I discussed earlier, it's basically a way of putting instructors or instructors with the student into an office, closing the door, and they're the only ones that can be heard. And I'll talk about that and show you how to do that in a few minutes. The last view, which I know there are a few instructors that have been using it, it is great when you're trying to engage the students. It shows you who raised their hands, who agrees with you, who disagrees with you, and if someone, either a presenter or a participant, has stepped away, or even yourself, this will tell them that you are away from the computer so that you can keep track. If they come back, most of the times, unfortunately, they forget to take off that step away, so you can remind them that they need to be back present into the class. So if you change your view, it's not going to change everybody's view. So, you know, that's a good way to keep whichever one is more comfortable that you see fit. Like I said, most of us use the standard attendees view because that just shows you what is going on within the classroom. So on that note there, let's talk about the breakout room. So you're going to click on the middle button, and as you can see, it says Start Breakouts. And now you have a list of people. So far, we have 7 people in the main meeting room, and that is basically your lobby view. If you want to put just the instructors into a breakout room, what you're going to do is click on your first instructor, hold the Shift key, and click on the additional instructors. Now you can see there's going to be a drop-down menu to the side of their names that will give you a selection. It will either be main meeting, breakout 1, 2, or 3. You could have as many breakout rooms as you need. I don't think you need that many. The most I've used is 1, but there are times that you might need a few more depending on your class, but this gives you the options to, you know, create as many as you need. So once you have your instructors highlighted, the main menu comes up, you are going to click on where it says Breakout Room 1. Click on that, and you're going to see there's been a shift in the attendees view. Now, the main meeting has 4 students in it. The breakout room has 3. but yet it is not open yet. So make sure nobody starts talking or nobody turns on their cameras. You have to hit the button at the top where it says Start Breakouts. Now you're back into the main room. You switch your view back to attendees. And now, as you can see, you're back in the main lobby view with everybody of who's in the class. All right, so now we're moving down to the chat box. And I know all of you know how to use it. You know, I see it throughout the class, and you guys do well with it, as well as the students do. But now you have a few options that are different than you would as a presenter. If you go under the chat menu, you're going to see that you have the option of, start chat with, in case if there's a tab at the bottom that doesn't have one for presenters or hosts, this is where you would go and click on it so that now you have the tab to show and people can chat amongst the presenters and hosts with everyone else. I know at the beginning we used to have our chats full. It always depends on how interactive the students are and the presenters. So that would always determine how quickly that chat box fills up. If you see a little hazard sign at the top and you need to clear the chat, you have the option of clearing it. But I would say if you really need to, before you clear it, you could always email the chat history. And if you click on it, that is just going to go directly to your email that is associated with your Adobe Connect account. And you'll see in your email, it will give you a history of what the everyone chat box, whatever was written in there. So once you do that, you don't have to because it's automatically recorded in the session. Then you would go and clear your chat. As you can see, now you're starting from fresh. We normally do this at the end of class just to make sure that when they come back the next day, there's not the previous conversations in there. The one other thing that I want to stress is as presenters, you guys know that we tell you guys to be green in your chat box. As a host, you guys will now be blue. So make sure you go down to your color chat, change it to blue, so that when you type to anyone, presenters, or another host that may be in the class with you, you guys will be blue instead of green, and they'll understand that you guys are now hosts and not presenters.
Okay, so now as we start to wrap things up, we want to help you with some troubleshooting. Listen, we've recognized early that this is not perfect. There are lots of places along the way that we can get hung up. Some are within our control and others are not. There are lagging issues. Adobe makes it clear that they are experiencing high demand, and there's a lot of demand on their systems. There's a lot of demand on the different connections that we have. So some of these things we'll be able to make adjustments as hosts, and other things we're not going to be able to. So we want to help you understand where those things are that you can make adjustments to. So I'll call your attention back up to the connection status meter. Currently mine is green in 5 bars, but you will see undoubtedly that depending on the demands on the system, it will change. Your bars will go down, and as particularly when they start running videos or the recruits start opening up more webcams, you'll see that drop down to orange and to drop down a couple bars as well. So what can you do as a host to assist with that? Under your meetings tab, I'll call your attention to a couple things. First, again, if the problems are with your audio, get the people having issues to go through their audio setup wizard again. All right, and we've gone through that a couple times, so I won't do it again here. With the other things that you can do is have them perhaps adjust the microphone settings with the drop down there. And we've talked about that as well, but just as a reminder, there are some settings there to adjust your microphone volume and make sure you're on the correct mic. So you'll see here I have 3 potential mics. You want to make sure that anyone having an issue is on the correct microphone. Failing that, or continuing on with troubleshooting, under preferences, when you click on preferences, you'll see that a new drop-down appears. And you had access to this earlier as a presenter, but as a host, you'll have a few more options that were not open to you. So I'm going to cover the things that you want to be able to make adjustments to. You'll also see there are some options that Paul's going to cover in just a few minutes that we don't want you to touch, because it starts messing with the whole layout of the classroom. So here, the first preference is under General, obviously, and we don't want you touching anything under there. The display name, this shouldn't be anything that you need to touch, but obviously, and it has nothing to do with troubleshooting. Same with audio conference. But the fourth one down under video, this is where you as a host can make some adjustments if you notice that your connection status is dropping, or particularly when recruits are opening webcams or presenters are streaming video. So again, this should be something that you're familiar with, but one of the things that I'll call your attention to here is the video quality. Best obviously is HD, and what this is doing is running the smoothest video with the best resolution, but it does increase the bandwidth usage. So if you're running into video lagging, or the instructors are playing a video and you're noticing that it's really slowing things down, you can start bringing that down. Standard is in the center, and this has to do with the resolution and also the bandwidth. So you're getting reasonable quality, but you're going to notice it in the presenters. The video feed is going to seem a little more stuttered, but it's going to stream faster. So you're kind of, as a host, you're in there trying to figure out what the sweet spot is. And when we are in a situation where I know that we're going to be streaming video and or we're going to have recruits' webcams open, I bring it all the way down to low. All right. So this is the lowest setting, but it is streaming with the least amount of lag. All right. So those are definitely things that you're going to want to be able to get into quickly and make your adjustments on the fly. When you make these adjustments, if these are changes that are not at the Adobe end or that are based on your internet connection, you should see your connection status change relatively quickly. All right. So again, when we get back into normal mode, I bring them back up to HD, and that is the smoothest. It's important to note that when you make a change in your video setting, that you also don't just X out, but you go down to the Done button. Right? That sets your preferences here, and that makes the change. All right, so adjust your video feed, hit the Done button, and then you will likely have to come back into this and make an adjustment again. The other troubleshooting issue that you might run into is when the presenters are sharing their screens from their local desktops. That can run into some lag as well. So again, our preference is to keep it as high as possible so it's streaming fast, but you may notice your connection status drops or there's lagging. So under screen share settings, you can adjust from standard up to high would be optimal. But if you're noticing lagging, bring it down to low, and then be sure to hit your Done button there, and that'll save your settings. You also have the option here to show cursors, but we found that it more or less serves as a distraction to have the presenters see cursors as well. But that's another option here. All right, so when you're done, come back up.
Okay, what I'd like to talk to you now is about, before we close out the training, is some administrative tasks. So a couple of things I want to make you aware of is, even though you're now being trained to be the host level, that's in the classroom. The 5 of us that maintain the Adobe licenses are still considered the admins, and we still have to do a bunch of the stuff behind the scenes. But the other thing that you need to be aware of is that one of the 5 licensed users also has to be in your classroom at all times. Otherwise, the classroom shuts down. So I want you to be aware of that, so that if you happen to be running call ball training at nighttime, that you're going to see one of the 5 of our names still be listed as host, and they're still going to be logged in, and they have to remain logged in for the duration of the class. But be aware that we're not really there. We're logged in, but we're not really paying attention to the class. You are the host and you are running the class, but we have to stay logged in because they need a licensed user logged in at all times. So you just need to be aware of that. The other stuff that I want to mention to you about is, again, more administrative housekeeping tasks. And I can't stress this enough. You are now being trained to the highest level privilege that Adobe Connect has. So with that power that comes with that also comes some responsibilities and some expectations that I have as the implementer of this project is to abide by certain things. So the first thing I want to talk about is your login. So this is your login as a host. This is not to be shared with anyone else that that you normally would give your login, email, and password to. You are not to do that. You're also not to log in on multiple computers unless you leave yourself logged in so that another user could come in as a host and then start doing different things in the software. If they are not host trained, they are not to have host privileges. Cut and dry. Okay, the other thing that we're going to ask for is that the 5 admins, we've done a tremendous amount of work in this software. We've done a lot with setup and content and poll questions. Here's the deal. You're the host of the classroom. You're working to the training that we just gave you today. You're not to be editing poll questions. You're not to be changing layouts. You're not to be changing any preferences other than the ones that we took you through in the training. Can't stress this enough because we don't want to have to go back and do work that we've already done. We don't want the students to see a different look or different things than what they normally get during the training. So again, you have the privileges. What I'm telling you is not to do things outside of your training. And because Big Brother is always watching, we will be logged in. If there's any violation of any of these, I'm going to be forced to have to take host login privileges away from that person. Okay, so again, we've done way too much work. There's too much impact to our customers if you go rogue and do something you shouldn't. Other than that, I appreciate all your time coming to the training today. And what this is going to enable is now we're going to have more people that can do the host privileges. And what that's going to enable us to do is actually add a lot more content and a lot more training into the virtual classroom. And because we have now more people that can act as hosts, we're not burdening just the 5 admins.